Bring in show music, please.
Hi, I'm CNBC producer Katie Kramer. Today on Squawk Pod, the stunning overthrow of Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro. Wall Street reacts.
We're not going to make this political this morning.
Says who? Says who?
Our Eamon Javers with the latest from Washington.
In the president's first remarks to the public, Venezuela's vast oil wealth was front and center.
And the man prosecuting the case in the U.S. against Maduro, U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York, Clayton.
Drug trafficking, fentanyl, cocaine, other similarly deadly drugs is a global, sophisticated business where the players have the resources and I would say the infrastructure equivalent to our best run companies.
Plus,
we are going through with this.
It's going to happen.
Here we go. It's been a year in the making.
the first day of the rest of our lives, the media industry's newest kid on the block, Versant, made up from the spun-off cable networks of NBC. CEO Mark Lazarus.
Everything we do is going to matter, and every little piece is, there's going to be a much more of a magnifying glass on what we do.
It's Monday, January 5th, 2026. Squawk Pod begins right now.
Stand Becky by in 3, 2, 1. Cue it, please.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Squawk Box right here on CNBC. We are live from the Nasdaq market site in Times Square. I'm Becky Quick, along with Joe Kernen and Andrew Ross Sorkin. And here we go.
Happy
Everybody's
New Year.
Back.
What a way to begin the new year with a real...
We are back with a bang.
Well, that's good for the people of Venezuela, but also good for the people of Versant.
Yes, big day today. The blue carpet is already rolled out here at the Nasdaq for Versant.
We're going to be around in the background, I would think. I don't think... We're
Front
probably
center,
not
probably
going to
not.
be actually ringing the...
We're ringing the bell, folks.
Well,
Just
we
explain-
probably... We will be
Versant,
there. Versant is.
parent company of CNBC and Becky and
it will
Joe
start-
and myself, along with the other Morning Joe.
He'll be here.
And Mika
Yep.
and a couple other folks are going to be here to ring the bell.
And I love the one, even calling it talent. I mean, that was in Groundhog Day. Did he really just call himself
Hairdo?
the talent? Yeah, hairdo. But just calling, I mean, we use that in the loosest possible sense. But I don't know where we'll be standing. The important people are going to be
ringing the bell.
probably ringing the bell. We're just
Mark
happy
Lazarus
to be. We're happy
is
to
gonna
be
be joining
included.
us a little later this morning,
We're
too,
happy to
to
be
talk all about
included
it.
for an extended interview of like 30 seconds. Hey, Mark, congratulations. Do what you do so well and just keep doing it. That's going to be my question.
No blood for oil! No blood for oil!
I mean, Venezuela is loaded with oil, and they used to produce a lot of oil. And socialism, this is the result of what socialism can do to the means of production.
But huge
in a
questions,
country.
and this is where we're going to go with this, huge questions just about...
Well, I know. I saw all the hair on fire. This is
no, the ability to control it, the amount of money it's going to take
I understand.
to go get it, if that's what this is really about.
And when in the past, if you break it, you got to fix it. This was already broken. That's all I'll say. But that's what. But the weird thing is, after a week of trying to defend Somali fraud in Minnesota, Democrats now, this is the first Venezuelan criminal that Democrats have not welcomed into the country.
We're not going to make this political this morning. We're going to get the latest right
Says
now.
who?
We're going to go to D.C.
Says who?
We're going to try to keep this.
All right, speak for yourself.
Down the middle here. The latest in the U.S. capture of
as we
Venezuela
always
leader Maduro. Want to get to Eamon Javers. He's in Washington this morning with the latest as the debate continues about what happens next.
Yeah, good morning, guys. The United States says it was strictly a law enforcement operation, but Friday night's explosions, gunfire, and darkened helicopters sweeping low over the Caracas skyline gave it the feel of something very different: regime change in Venezuela. And by Saturday, with Venezuelan leader Nicolás Maduro in handcuffs in New York, it was clear that the clandestine U.S. operation was about both enforcing U.S. law and changing leadership in Venezuela. Now Maduro is expected to make his first appearance in federal court in the United States to face federal drug charges later today. And in the meantime, President Trump says the United States government will run the Latin American country for an unspecified period of time.
We're going to be running it with a group, and we're going to make sure it's run properly. We're going to rebuild the oil infrastructure, which will cost billions of dollars. It'll be paid for by the oil companies directly. They will be reimbursed for what they're doing, but that's going to be paid. and we're going to get the oil flowing the way it should be.
And as you can see in the president's first remarks to the public, Venezuela's vast oil wealth was front and center in his explanation of what's going to happen next in that country. The country has the largest proven oil reserves in the world, 303 billion barrels, which amounts to about 17% of all global reserves. That's according to the U.S. Energy Information Administration. And even as they were briefing the press on the operation in Venezuela, administration officials, guys, had one eye on another country, Cuba. Secretary of State Marco Rubio appeared on TV over the weekend saying that the Trump administration doesn't like the Cuban government, which was closely aligned with Maduro, and that if I lived in Havana, he said, and I was in the government, I'd be concerned. President Trump, briefing reporters on Air Force One last night, also said that he believes that the government of Cuba is about to fall. He said independent of any U.S. action because of the implosion of the Cuban economy. Guys, back over to you.
Eamon, in terms of speaking to folks in Washington over the past weekend that I know you have, what is the sense just from either members of Congress or the Senate about, to the extent we're going to occupy or we're going to do whatever you think this next step is? Obviously, there's questions to some degree even about the constitutionality, about the invasion itself. Then obviously we're going to talk to Jay Clayton later today about what that prosecution is going to look like. Then there are the big questions about the business community and to the extent that they're going to either go into Venezuela, invest in Venezuela, not invest in Venezuela. What are you hearing?
Yeah, look, obviously there are more questions than answers this morning, Andrew, but your reaction initially fell, as you might imagine, on partisan lines. We saw Lindsey Graham, United States Senator, flying on Air Force One with the president last night, saying this is a great thing. This is something that other administrations didn't have the courage to do. Even the Biden administration, he said, had a $25 million bounty out on Maduro's head for information on his whereabouts and his return to the United States. So this is something that needed to be done. Democrats, on the other hand, questioned the constitutionality of it, questioned why they weren't, why Congress wasn't informed about this or had any role in this whatsoever. The administration said simply this wasn't the type of mission you could brief Congress on because Congress has a history of leaking and because they didn't know exactly when they were going to be able to conduct this, given the complexity of the military operation, the need for secrecy, also the weather conditions, Maduro's whereabouts, all of that had to fall in line in one particular way in order for this operation to be successful. And they said they just didn't have time to notify Congress. So I think we're going to hear a lot more questions raised about this today, particularly what the administration's plan is for running, as the president says, the Venezuelan government. You saw Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State, on TV over the weekend, sort of suggesting that actually what we're going to do as the United States government is sort of more or less co-opt the existing Venezuelan government. And that seems to me to be, guys, a way of getting around the Iraq problem, which is where you devastate the leadership, devastate the army, devastate the infrastructure, and then try to build an entire new government up from scratch. This model seems to be trying to just co-opt the existing infrastructure, existing government officials, and just, sort of nudge them to do what the U.S. government wants. We'll see if it works.
Hey, Eamon, we've talked an awful lot about the oil there. How much of this also, though, has to do with concern about Chinese and even Russian influence in Venezuela and the region?
They're already there.
I mean, I think that's a huge piece of it. I mean, Marco Rubio on television yesterday said, look, we're just not going to allow a country with those oil reserves in our own hemisphere become a playground, in effect, for U.S. enemies, including, he name-checked Russia and China, but also Iran.
You can't turn Venezuela into the operating hub for Iran, for Russia, for Hezbollah, for China, for the Cuban intelligence agents that control that country. That cannot continue.
Now, I think one of the questions is what happens to Chinese assets and Russian assets in Venezuela? What does the U.S. government do with those, assuming the U.S. government's going to be in a position to decide? And then, ultimately, what happens to the oil? Does the United States, dial down the oil supply to coming out of Venezuela to anywhere else other than the United States to zero? That's an open question. And the New York Times is reporting this morning, guys, that a number of Venezuelan oil ships, maybe as many as a dozen or more, have left port and are making a run for it right now with their transponders off and engaging in cloaking efforts to try to see if they can get out of that area and get out of the U.S. blockade. We'll see what the U.S. Navy does about that.
There is precedent, obviously, and the Constitution does give the president a lot of leeway in things like this. In 1989, H.W. Got rid of deposed Noriega, and this guy Maduro is a much bigger threat to the U.S. and to the world than Noriega ever was, and it all held up in court, and Noriega ended up, serving time, and obviously it's not, exactly the same, Panama versus Venezuela. Do we have any VO of the millions of people out in the streets down in Venezuela that are finally free, or any testimonials that I'm seeing? Eamon, I don't know if we can run any of that, but the people down there seem to be, there's a sense of relief that, that nightmare.
I mean, clearly there's some relief. Maduro was not a popular figure in Venezuela. He had lost the recent election clearly and seized power anyway, despite losing the election. So, there's going to be some relief there. I think the questions are, what is the U.S. role going to be in, quote unquote, running Venezuela, as the president was talking about over the weekend, and how will that be received in Venezuela? There are going to be some people who will chafe at that and say, we want Venezuelans to run Venezuela. And can the U.S. sort of navigate that with this sort of co-option strategy? We saw the vice president of Venezuela come out initially denouncing this, demanding proof of life for Maduro, wanting to know, what the U.S.'s intent is here. She seems to be a key figure that the United States is banking on, at least President Trump is banking on, to sort of come around to U.S. view on things and become more compliant. Her tone shifted through the course of the weekend, and she called for dialogue and coexistence with the United States by the time sort of the weekend had come to a close. So maybe that bet in terms of personnel might play out for the U.S., and then you get somebody in power who will be sort of, if not pro-Western, pro-U.S., at least willing to shut down some of the things that the United States objects to so much.
I saw different things coming from Democrats. A lot of the same Democrats that wanted to do this and are on. It was funny. I saw one Democrat, I think the one from Connecticut, actually, the tape was played for him, and he was like, because he said that this would be a good thing, let's do it, but then he pivoted to something else. But Mark Kelly, to his credit, in Arizona said, no, I think this is good. I think it's a good move. It just depends on what happens from here, and it always does.
I think having Maduro out of the country, now in New York, being prosecuted for his crimes is a positive thing. The big question is just what comes next and who winds up in charge in Venezuela.
The expression, if you break it, you own it. This was broken.
Yeah, Colin Powell's famous warning.
And people are going to be waiting in the wings for something to go wrong and celebrating that. I understand that. But this could be good. This could be a good thing for the world eventually. Amen. It could be.
Yeah. It's a high risk, high reward strategy, no doubt. And, Colin Powell's warning was, if you break it, you bought it. Your point, Joe, it was already broken. And the question is, does the United States want to own it or not? Clearly now the United States owns it politically. And can the United States fix it? That's the governance challenge here, which is more than a military challenge. I mean, the military operation, just as a non-military guy, as an outsider, watching that and reading the details of it, incredibly impressive execution by the U.S. military here in terms of the timing, the delicacy of this. There were some significant casualties on the Venezuelan side, but it was as surgical an operation as you can possibly imagine, executed by the U.S. government. No U.S. troops killed, no helicopters downed. I mean, it's a remarkable thing to witness. But the challenge is what happens next, right? And what happens in Venezuela? And can the United States government succeed in this co-option strategy? Or does there need to be, as the president threatened over the weekend, a second wave of U.S. military involvement there? All of that is just very unclear at this time.
Okay. Eamon, we're going to be talking to you a lot more, and we're going to be learning a lot more this morning. Thank you.
Tease will be next.
Coming up on Squawk Pod, the man who will be prosecuting the case against Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro, U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York, Jay Clayton. He says it's a long time coming, since 2011, in fact.
This case involving narco-terrorism, the importation of cocaine, with the facilitation of the FARC, the use of government resources, has been there for that long. Nicolás Maduro was charged in 2020 as part of that conspiracy in a superseding indictment.
You're listening to Squawk Pod from CNBC with Joe Kernen, Becky Quick, and Andrew Ross Sorkin.
Up and Andrew, Q.
Of course, the biggest news, Venezuela's Maduro facing federal drug trafficking and weapon charges in a case now being handled by the Southern District of New York in Manhattan. Joining us right now, U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York, Jay Clayton. He is a former SEC chair in the Trump administration. We're thrilled to have you on this morning to try to understand what comes next. Obviously, you're going to be down in Brooklyn, I imagine, or I don't know if Brooklyn, but in the downtown later today. When did you learn this was all happening?
Well, let me say Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Congratulations on the spin today.
Oh, thank you.
Amazing that you've gotten it done this quickly, and good luck with it.
We had a lot to do with it.
Yep.
Hey,
we're here.
You're here. You're doing
here. How long were you working on this?
How long? Well, just to clear the air, I was scheduled to be on.
Yes.
And I'm happy to be on, and I'm happy to talk about this.
So let's talk about
thank
it.
you.
We appreciate
You don't look that tired. So were you working all weekend?
Yeah, I was working all weekend, but my people are working even harder than I am.
And when did you learn this was all going down?
Well, let's
I assume at some point somebody in Washington calls you and says this is happening, and it's you are going to be the one who's going to prosecute this case.
Let's separate the operation from the legal.
Okay.
This case has been in the Southern District since 2011. This case involving narco-terrorism, the importation of cocaine, with the facilitation of the FARC, the use of government resources has been there for that long. Nicolás Maduro was charged in 2020 as part of that conspiracy in a superseding indictment. We had another superseding indictment that was unsealed in connection with this operation, furthering those charges. What is fascinating here is that if you look at and I would encourage the public to look at these publicly available documents as to what's going on. What's fascinating here is that there are already two people who, as part of this conspiracy, the former head of the equivalent of the CIA, the former head of intelligence, and a former high-ranking military leader who have been convicted, pled guilty to these types of charges. Now, the other thing that I want to say, and I'm proud to say it, I'm very proud to say this as an American, is that these are allegations. Every person charged in the United States is entitled to the presumption of innocence and has their day in court. And that's exactly how we should be treating this.
Okay, so just take us through the weekend, though. Mm-hmm. So the president is down in Mar-a-Lago watching all of this. The helicopters are obviously down in Venezuela, literally extracting him. Mm-hmm. You learn about this when, how? Walk us through what happened in terms of how you, did you know this was happening before it happened?
We knew that he was indicted, and if you were reading the news, you knew that this was a focus of the administration. And it's not just a focus of the administration on Nicolás Maduro. If you ask, and we can bring this back to New York, and then I'll go back to it in a second. If you ask every New Yorker, what are the biggest threats that you see to New York and your safety? It's gun-toting criminals and transnational drug trafficking into the United States. And those have been two focuses for a while. When I got to the office at the Southern District, put aside white-collar crime, something we talk about a lot in this program, there were three things that I focused on. One, this type of drug trafficking into the United States. We put additional resources on these types of matters. Second thing, and you've heard me talk about it, and gun crime is way down in the city. I'd like to think that we have a small part to do with it. Gun-toting criminals. The other is sex trafficking, particularly minor sex trafficking. So we had ramped up our efforts in connection with this prosecution.
Let me ask you about this then, because we're not going to get. Sounds like we're not going to get the full blow-by-blow over the weekend from you.
Well, operations are not my thing. Right? Okay. Operations are a military thing.
The biggest question, I think, that in the country to some degree is the constitutionality of us effectively going into another sovereign country and extracting the leader of that country. I imagine this is going to be the argument that his lawyers are going to make before you even get into the merits of the case itself.
Well, and Andrew, thank you for saying that, because for those reasons, let's stick to facts on the ground as we know them. People have been making the analogy to Noriega. There are other precedents to look at, including, and I would encourage people to look at this, Libya. Benghazi and the arrest of a number of people who were engaged in that, And then one that's close to my heart that was most recent, Pan Am 103. After years and years, they finally brought to justice through Libya. Yeah, there's examples in Syria and combatants during those wars being back to the United States. So there is precedent. What I'll say from the perspective of where I sit, my people and I are completely comfortable with this prosecution.
Yeah, I think his lawyers have already suggested that as a leader of another country, he is immune from prosecution. Is our argument that he's not officially elected?
Secretary Rubio and that press conference from Mar-a-Lago was pretty impressive. This is a president that will stand there and answer any question. The most accessible president in my lifetime. Secretary Rubio is somebody who I think doesn't waste a word. And he was very clear about this, not only in that press conference, but over the weekend. He said, we never recognized, the Biden administration never recognized, the EU never recognized, and 60 countries, and this is all in the indictment, did not recognize Maduro as the duly elected leader of Venezuela.
Do you know who's going to be representing him?
I do not.
You do not. So have you had any communication with whoever would be representing his team?
I have not.
Okay.
I have not. My team may have.
There's a separate question, and maybe it's the sort of, again, a broader question, which is, if we, meaning the U.S., prepared to arrest somebody like Maduro in their home country, why aren't we? I mean, the critics of this, of the way this has been approached, beyond the questions about congressional authority and other things, would say, well, we should be going into Mexico. We should be going into all sorts of countries. They look at this and they say, well, what about the pardon of the ex-president of Honduras, who did something that seemingly seems like exactly the same thing? How do you react to that?
My answer is where I started, which is the biggest threats to the United States are state-sponsored crimes against Americans and narco trafficking into the United States, killing hundreds of thousands of people every year. And one thing that I heard, which I have to say, I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe I'm hearing this. Most of this is cocaine, not fentanyl.
I love it. Right, you've heard that.
Okay, how many deaths are there because somebody thought they were taking cocaine and there was actually laced with fentanyl? And is cocaine somehow fine? Cocaine has been a scourge in this country, my entire adult life. It's an absolutely terrible drug.
I guess the question is, where's the line then in terms of going into another country? And this is the question. So you would, if you're going to do Venezuela, would you do Mexico? Is this a pretext? The other question is here we are looking at the stock price of Chevron and other companies. Obviously, Chevron is really the only major American company that has a big operation there. People look even at what the president has said. There's an argument to be made that this is a pretext, right, effectively, for our ability to control valuable oil and minerals and other things.
Let me take a step back and say this, that these types of questions, they're interesting law school questions. I think you have to deal with each of these things idiosyncratically, right? Did anybody, we had a killer capture against bin Laden, and indicted for the bombings in the embassies in Africa.
Right.
That I don't think any American felt bad about that.
That many Americans feel this. Once again, right down partisan lines. But it is. But I've heard
in court today and in court over the next year or two.
We'll see how it plays out.
I imagine his lawyers are going to argue it's a pretext for some kind of control of a country.
And Andrew, this is
then, by the way, there's a big question about what happens next there.
This is the greatest country in the world because we get to have those arguments. I'm totally comfortable with this.
What do you make, by the way, to the extent that you could answer, the extent there's critics out there that look at actually the
out there?
Out there.
Okay.
It's okay.
Have you read the newspapers? Out there?
No, I know.
I know.
There's a big question about.
You see any of the other side of it that you don't have any of those questions pertinent about how excited people are there that they're crying that their entire family was murdered by this guy. And now they're free. There's millions of people in the street.
There's going to be
should I ask those questions?
There's going to be no argument made in court about that issue. And here's the guy who's going to be prosecuting this guy, right?
And we respect the rule of law. We respect process. We absolutely respect people's rights. But people think I'm crazy, but I rode the subway up here today. You know what I was thinking? I was thinking, you know what? If people feel safe on this subway, if they think there's nobody on this platform that's going to use a gun in a crime, if they think that there aren't drug traffickers here, all the work that my office has been doing on the parks, on the housing projects, to get gun-toting criminals, to get people who trafficking drugs to kids off the streets, that's what the American people want.
What does that say? But honestly, what would it say about Mexico, for example? That's where most of the fentanyl comes from.
What I'm going to say is it's idiosyncratic. What do we know about Mexico? Without stating anything specific, what do we know about Mexico? We know that significant portions of that country are controlled by drug traffickers. That's what we know.
Okay, and therefore?
And those drug traffickers are bringing deadly fentanyl into the United States. From my office's perspective, we're going to build cases against people like that, hopefully get enough information, enough to indict them.
Right.
And we want them brought to justice.
In places where there is no discourse, China, Russia, other places, they can control the entire hemisphere and not one person is going to say a thing about it. We are the leading country of the Western Hemisphere. You can hark back to the Monroe Doctrine, wherever you want to go. It's important that we are able to flex our muscles to some extent here if we're wearing the white hat and if we're doing what I think is proper. If it's not going to work for the American people, they can elect different people in this year in November, impeach Trump and elect enough senators, get rid of, and we won't even have to worry about it.
Let me go back to something that I've said, and the American people should understand. Drug trafficking, fentanyl, cocaine, other similarly deadly drugs is a global, sophisticated business where the players have the resources and I would say the infrastructure equivalent to our best run companies. We need to focus our resources on bankrupting those cartels.
Let me just ask you a different question. Does it help or hurt your case in court for the President of the United States to talk about either taking over the country and or the resources which and the leverage that us either having control or something else has in regard to your case?
Let me turn that around and say, can you imagine a situation where you have this type of circumstance? Let's just put that, where the President of the United States does not talk about the ramifications and the importance of what's going on in the world as a result. I think that and that's not my role, but that is the role of the President of the United States, the Secretary of State, to talk about not just a legal action, but what that legal action means for the American people. And I think that's not where I'm supposed to work.
Right.
It's not where I'm going to work. But incredible to come out and be so transparent, answer any question.
Are you convinced the Constitution gives the executive branch and President Trump the authority to act in this fashion?
I am completely comfortable I'm completely comfortable with our prosecution.
This is all just, what is this? You're right, it's like law school.
I'm completely comfortable with what we're doing. And I think I'm proud to be able to do this in America.
And we're not plundering the oil business. We're not doing it. That's another left-wing
people who are charged with crimes in America. And you'll notice I'm being very careful. Only the facts in the indictment am I talking about. But people who are charged with crimes in America, they have the presumption of innocence.
Why have the ability to put on defense? It's not exactly like Noriega. He exhausted the court system here, and everything was upheld.
Joe, there's countless examples.
Okay.
Since we're here in New York, and we have a new mayor that's taken off.
He's mad. He's livid about this.
He apparently called the president over the weekend, told him that he not only didn't support it, but thought it was illegal, apparently. And there's a second order issue, which is, I don't know if you saw this news about the police commissioner who's not going to be reporting directly to the mayor, which is unique, apparently, more recently, in terms of how there's going to be a deputy in between them. Does that matter? How do you think about that?
Well, the federal law enforcement, and including FBI, Homeland Security, DEA, our other law enforcement partners, much of what we do in New York, we can't do without the NYPD. And I expect to be able to continue to, we have been working incredibly constructively with the NYPD. and I expect to be able to continue to do that.
Have you met with the mayor yet?
I have not met with the mayor.
Has he reached out to you?
We saw each other at an event, but I haven't connected. He's a pretty busy guy right now, I think.
Do you want to connect with him?
Andrew, you've known me a long time.
No, I'm just curious if this is such an important issue in terms of the long-term relationship.
And there is no doubt in my mind that there is a lot of common ground in what we are trying to achieve, what the people of New York want, and what the mayor's administration will want in terms of. Nobody wants somebody walking into a bodega and shooting someone else. No one wants their kids to have to walk across needles to get to the. One of the great.
I don't disagree with you.
Let me tell you the greatest
thing. But I'll tell you that what I think could be a distinction, and I don't know if this is true or not, but his approach or views about law enforcement in certain circumstances, including, by the way, the legalization of prostitution, other things like that, which might not come under your purview, but nonetheless, you've talked a lot about using the federal laws in places like New York, with the argument that the people of New York want to use those federal laws, which are much stricter than the laws in this state.
Let me tell you what I know the people of New York want. Career criminals who use guns in crimes, they want continuous custody when those people are arrested. I would have thought that a long time ago, except that for some reason there are people in the state of New York who voted for something very different. There are a minority of people who I don't believe, I give them credit, I don't believe that they understand the consequences of not having continuous custody for career gun-toting criminals. By the way, you and I don't disagree. I think we're on the same page exactly on a personal level of what should happen to career criminals. What I'm asking. But we have we have the tools to do it, and we're going to use them. And my question is whether you believe that he is going to work in tandem with you, or in certain circumstances could say, you know what, we think that the feds are overplaying their hand because we want to have our own sovereignty. I do not expect anybody to throw sand in the gears of having career gun-toting criminals off the streets.
You saw how many people left Venezuela in the last 5 years. And you know where they all went? Yeah, here. So did he actually say, send Maduro back, but we're going to keep Kilmar Abrego Garcia? Is he quoted? No. I mean, that's basically what we're talking about here. It's crazy. It's crazy, and we're going to, how long is the term? Is it 4 years? Is that for mayor? And you can only do 2, but unless you're Bloomberg? Is that how it works? 2, yes. You can only do 2 unless you get around it somehow. You were so tactful at what you said. We both want the same things. But really, there could be a lot of exodus from New York City, could there not?
Well, there is an issue that we are seeing all over the country, and I think this is something that we should focus on. Competence in government. We want the same things.
Do you think we're going to lose that with this administration?
Well, here's something that I have now found in my job that I did not expect. And you're seeing this play out in Minnesota, you see it play out in these other issues, which is, do we have a sufficient audit trail? Now I'm going to go back to something we all know here, like Sarbanes-Oxley, Dodd-Frank, put in place rigorous audit trails for companies. So if companies misbehave, we can actually find it pretty quickly. Like, first thing I say to my guys, what do the auditors do? Bring me that stuff, let's figure out what's going on. In state and local government, the lack of audit trail, maybe it's incompetence, but sometimes incompetence becomes, I don't know, something more. And what the American people should be demanding is accountability for the money that they deliver to state and local governments.
Jay Clayton, I want to thank you for coming in this morning.
You were already booked.
I was already booked.
You were already booked. We'll be watching.
But you didn't cancel.
You didn't cancel.
Thank you. And come on back as the case progresses, of course. Thank you.
Coming up on Squawk Pod, what's next for CNBC's own parent company, Versant? We are officially spun off from Comcast today and hitting the Nasdaq as an independent entity. Versant CEO Mark Lazarus maps out the future of the media business.
I use golf as our model home because Golf Channel's a big important brand, and we used that to then launch other businesses like Golf Now, our Tee Time business, like Golf Pass, our video subscription business where we're partners with Rory McIlroy, and an underlying software business that connects us with more golf courses than we even create tee times for.
We'll be right back. This is Squawk Pod.
You're watching Squawk Box right here on CNBC. I'm Becky Quick along with Joe Kernen and Andrew Ross Sorkin.
CNBC parent company Versant will start trading as an independent company on the Nasdaq today. And joining us now, Versant CEO Mark Lazarus. We're going through with this.
We are going through with this.
It's going to happen.
Here we go. It's been a year in the making.
9:30.
Welcome. Thanks for being here, and Happy New Year, everything else. I quoted you earlier. I'm going to quote you again. This is a big, profitable portfolio, which has been historically managed with different priorities. Investing to build the brands of Versant was simply not a priority. That won't be the case anymore. Is that I put that in a nutshell as the corporate mission of what
that is exactly right. And as part of Comcast and NBCU, we had other priorities as a company, and I was part of the decision making. We made different decisions because we had a different company and a different strategy, and now bringing these into their own company, we're going to be able to invest into them. We'll invest organically, and we're doing that, and I think you guys are seeing some of what we're doing. And the strategy of these verticals, and I saw that you had Rich on earlier, and I think he's listening to what we're saying. Hopefully the market is listening to what we're saying, that vertical scale is going to be a way for us to differentiate and to diversify our business, to be not so beholden to pay TV. While that's still a big profitable part for us, it's not going to be the end game.
So as part of a large company, there were times where there were parts of NBC that could have used investment, and for lack of a better term, we provided some cash flow for other ventures that we could have used for ourselves that we didn't. Did that? You can say that actually did happen?
Well, it was part of a strategic imperative to do other things.
Right.
Peacock, very important for NBCU. Investing in the theme parks, very important for NBCU. But, listen, these are big profitable businesses. You guys generate a very nice profitable business. It's an important, the audience that we speak to and that hopefully we're speaking to now is amazing.
We don't know how to act if we have investment.
How we're going to act is you're going to be able to look at where are the best ideas in this portfolio, not in a much larger portfolio, but as importantly, everything we do is going to matter, and every little piece is, there's going to be a much more of a magnifying glass on what we do.
Speak to this. There is sort of like a conventional wisdom on the street that ultimately we're going to be either merged into some other business or we're going to try to buy a similar linear business. You've tried to dispel people of that. What are the kinds of things that you would want to buy, acquire, or do?
Let's start with the organic investments. We're going to expand what we're doing digitally in places where we maybe have had just tiptoed in, and that's really CNBC. There's a much broader play with the retail investor that we can utilize the brand, the reputation of our brand, the credibility of CNBC and the talent that is here on how we're going to achieve, how we can help retail investors understand their portfolio with charts and graphs, using maybe AI stock recommendations. There's going to be a lot of opportunity in the organic investment. For MS Now, there's never been a digital footprint really other than a text-based digital footprint, no video strategy. That was a decision that NBC News Group made. We're going to make a different decision and invest in a D2C product for MS Now for a very large audience that has a real passion around what MS says to them. And that'll go down the line. We've made 2 small acquisitions. We're in the process of finalizing those already. Free TV networks to diversify our ad base away from pay TV into free over-the-air television, and a company called Indie Cinema, which is a software business that will help power what we do globally with Fandango in the movie ticketing business. So investing in the verticals as opposed to just horizontally investing in more linear scale. The thing, and you guys are a big part of this, our portfolio is 62% live news and sports. Rich, earlier you guys talked about the bundle and different types of bundles and cord shaving. live news and sports is a big part of that. And we have a really strong position with CNBC, MS Now, USA Network with its large sports portfolio, and Golf Channel to play in that live news and sports area. And that's an important part. To go horizontally and dilute that significantly may be a more difficult road for us, so we think vertical is the way to go.
So was Rich Greenfield wrong when he suggested that you might be interested in some piece of Warner Brothers Discovery if they were to spin off any of those pieces?
If there were pieces of any portfolio that we could say fit into our desire to build around a linear service and grow them vertically and invest in a genre, he mentioned food. That's an interesting one. But because it's a business that's much broader and it's a marketplace that's just broader than a media play.
Right.
And that might be interesting, but that's not our priority right now. Our priority is the 4 vertical markets that we are already in and that we have found some success. And specifically, I use golf as our model home because Golf Channel is a big important brand, and we used that to then launch other businesses like Golf Now, our Tee Time business, like Golf Pass, our video subscription business where we're partners with Rory McIlroy, and an underlying software business that connects us with more golf courses than we even create tee times for.
Is it fair to look at, I'm trying to decide on a comp. We do comps all the time for real estate wherever we are. If we look at what Netflix is saying that their Warner Brothers is saying that stub is worth, and you look at debt, and you look at cash flow, and you look at multiples, and then you look at where Versant is. Is it fair to compare those two and say that if they're worth $4 or $5 a share, Versant is undervalued given the relative?
Well, I hope so. I mean,
the
marketplace is going to dictate. We really like our portfolio compared to some of the other portfolios out there. We like our balance sheet. We're being launched with a fortified balance sheet that's going to really allow us to be aggressive and to be on our front foot as opposed to on our back foot and being worried about paying down debt with $1. So we are we like our position, and we think that we have a real opportunity. And listen, if we think we compare favorably to sort of the standalones that are out there, to the pure plays, and we think that our growth strategy will be a winner.
I mean, you could, as a money manager, you could arbitrage it based on just metrics where it is. If the other stub was trading, Versant will be trading today. When that comes out, you could buy Versant, sell the Warner Brothers.
We'll have to see what happens. It's an exciting day.
Good suggestion.
Probably a good way to end it. We'll have to see what happens. Godspeed.
Thank you. Glad to be in this with you.
See you at the bell.
Being here today.
Yeah, see you there.
And that is Squawk Pod for today. Thanks for listening on this Monday. Squawk Box is hosted by Joe Kernen, Becky Quick, and Andrew Ross Sorkin. Tune in weekday mornings on CNBC at 6 Eastern to get the smartest takes and analysis from our TV show right into your ears. Follow Squawk Pod wherever you get your podcasts. We'll meet you right back here tomorrow.
We are clear. Thanks, guys.